So for week 2 of our beginner month, we've got 2 inputs to work with. So in our transaction input, we have just the transaction IDs, the account number, the sort code, and the bank that sort code comes from, as well as the SWIFT codes related to that particular bank. So we can see the SWIFT code, that 4-letter bank code, and we also have the check digits as well. So first of all, in our transactions table, we wanted to add another clean step, and we wanted to get rid of those dashes in the sort code. So basically what I did was in the drop down here was go to clean option there and then remove punctuation, and then that will go through and it will remove those dashes for us. So we're just left with this 6-digit sort code instead, rather than the format that we kind of see it in often, in more human readable with the dashes in between. So we now want to be able to combine this information with those SWIFT codes and check digits. So we can use a join in order to do that. So if I were to pick up this clean step, for example, I could hover up to the transactions workflow and I could drop this view step onto join, and it will create for me this join step. Okay, and what a join step is going to allow us to do is going to allow us to find the bank from each row of our transaction table, and then we can connect it via the bank in the SWIFT code table so that we have information about the SWIFT code and the check digits as well. So we can see that we do this by using a join clause. So Tableau Prep's pretty clever. It picked up the common field in both datasets, so the bank. If we needed to change that, we could always click here and select a different field instead, but we're joining our bank to our bank field from each of those streams of the workflow. We have the colours underneath each of those fields to represent where they've come from in the workflow, which is really helpful as well. And we can see that our rows, we had 100 transactions. We had 7 of those SWIFT codes in the lookup table, and we get out of this 100 records, which is good. That means that every single one of our transactions will now have a SWIFT code and their check digits associated with them, which is great, so we can continue on building the workflow. When we go to our next clean step, then we can notice that we had this additional field called bank-1 that came from after our join step. And that's because we've got 2 fields called bank in this join step, because one came from the transaction table, one came from the SWIFT codes table. So in the next step, just to differentiate between those 2 fields, Tableau Prep renames one of them to bank-1, and so we just remove that by right-clicking on the field and saying remove. Okay, now we want to add on our country code. So we go to create calculated field, rename this field to be country code, and then in the expression box, then if we just use some quotation marks and do GB and close those quotation marks, and that will give us a field that just has GB repeated for every row. If we don't include those quotation marks, then we get an error. So it's saying, I don't know what this field is that you're looking for. It's trying to find a field rather than us dictating that it is the letters GB. So we do need to put those in quotation marks, and that will create for us this country code field. So now we're ready to put everything together, so we can create our IBAN. So my first step here was to go ahead and find the account number field and to change the data type from being numeric, so change it from being a number to being a string instead, so that we can combine it all nice and simply. So then we create our calculator field, but we basically just bring everything together. We do our country code and then a plus symbol, and then the check digits, a plus symbol, SWIFT code, a plus symbol, sort code, a plus symbol, and the account number. So the reason I've split it up onto different lines is just to make it easier to read. I could easily have had this all on one line, like so. So I could have just got rid of all those enters like this. It's absolutely not a problem. I could have left it like that. It's just so that it's slightly easier to read and the order of the fields there. But now I get my IBANs for each of my transactions, and all that's left to do is remove every other field so that I just have transaction ID and IBAN remaining. So that's what I've done here. Then of course an output step where I'm just saving as IBAN output, saving it as a CSV, and then of course I have to run my flow in order to make sure that that CSV runs. Okay, so that finished running and I've got my output refreshed there. So I hope that that was easy to follow along with, and thank you very much for watching.